After 3 years of pursuing her, I had finally succeeded in making Chloe, the most popular girl on campus, my girlfriend. But just when I thought my life was perfect, my best friend Mark approached me with an unbelievable story. He claimed he had traveled back in time from 10 years into the future. His purpose, he said, was to save the woman who was destined to become his wife, and as a secondary objective, to save me as well. He told me, his voice grim, that my new girlfriend was nothing more than a manipulative gold digger. He described her as a pretentious flirt and a toxic presence who would bring me nothing but misery. "If you don't want to be made a fool of," he warned, his eyes boring into mine, "you need to end your relationship with her right now." I was left utterly speechless, caught between the joy of my new relationship and the gravity of my friend's words. I didn't know what to think. Seeing my hesitation, Mark delivered the final, decisive blow. "She will bring you financial ruin," he said bluntly. "You will lose absolutely everything you own because of her." That was all it took. The very next second, without a moment's more thought, I broke up with her. Mark and I had been inseparable since childhood. Our bond was so tight that if he were ever to fall for a pyramid scheme, I would undoubtedly be his first recruit. So, when he told me he was a time traveler from a decade in the future, my immediate reaction wasn't to question his sanity. Instead, my practical side took over. "Why on earth couldn't you have come back 2 days earlier?" I asked, a hint of frustration in my voice. "You could have at least given me the topic for the college entrance exam essay." Mark just looked at me with a completely straight face. "If I had arrived 2 days earlier," he stated logically, "I would have had to take the exam too. With the state of my brain right now, how well do you think I would have done?" His point was valid, and I was left without a comeback. We sat in a moment of shared silence before he leaned forward, his expression turning serious. "Leo," he said, "I need your help." It turned out that Mark's primary mission was to save his future wife, a girl named Sophie. He explained that later this summer, on the very night the college entrance exam results were scheduled to be released, our city would be rocked by a horrific incident that the media would later dub the "top student kills her father" case. Sophie, who was the valedictorian in liberal arts, had suffered through a childhood filled with relentless domestic abuse. She had witnessed her father brutally beating her mother on countless occasions. The years of accumulated trauma were a ticking time bomb. On that fateful night, when her father once again brandished a knife and moved to attack her mother, Sophie, in a desperate act of defense, stabbed him to death from behind. The news sent shockwaves through the entire community. "I'm going to prevent that from happening," Mark declared. I nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "What do you need me to do?" I asked, ready to help. "Sophie doesn't know me yet," he explained. "That's where your wife comes in. She and Sophie were good friends in high school. If we can get her involved, our chances of success will be much higher. Forgive me, but as a recent high school graduate with zero romantic experience beyond my ill-fated 4-hour relationship, the phrase, 'your wife,' made me feel unexpectedly shy." "My wife?" I asked quietly. "You mean Chloe?" Mark let out a short, dismissive scoff. "Mia," he corrected. I stared at him, completely bewildered. "I don't even know anyone named Mia." "I just came from your wedding a short while ago in my time," Mark elaborated. "Mia told me herself that she's been in love with you for 12 years. That means she started developing feelings for you back when we were in high school." I was still trying to process this revelation when Mark's expression soured. "But speaking of Chloe," he began, his face twisting in disgust, "that woman cheated on you repeatedly behind your back. Then she had the audacity to constantly gaslight you and use emotional manipulation to keep you under her thumb. You almost fell into a severe depression because of her." If it hadn't been for Mia pulling you out of that dark place, you would have been—" He trailed off, but the implication was clear. I still found it hard to believe. In my eyes, Chloe was the school belle. She was gorgeous, intelligent, and had a beautiful singing voice. I had spent all 3 years of high school trying to win her affection. I believed she had finally been moved by my persistence and agreed to be with me after the college entrance exam. We had been an official couple for less than 4 hours. I thought I had finally achieved my dream, and that my happiness was just beginning. But then my best friend came and poured a bucket of ice-cold reality over my head. "You don't want to break up with her, do you?" Mark asked, seeing the conflict on my face. I struggled to find the words. "It's just, we only got together today." He took a deep breath and aimed for my biggest weakness. "You two break up during your junior year of college anyway. She dumps you the moment your family goes bankrupt. I even consulted a spiritual master. He said her energy is completely incompatible with yours. She'll obstruct your path to wealth and ruin your entire future. But hey, if you want to stay with her, don't let me stop you." I was so thoroughly spooked that I grabbed my phone on the spot. Just then, a text from Chloe appeared on the screen. "Leo, I miss you already." Under Mark's intense, watchful gaze, I typed a furious reply. "I've given it some thought, and I don't think we're a good match. Let's break up." She responded with a single question mark. Fearing she would try to argue or convince me otherwise, I blocked and deleted her contact in one decisive motion. Mark gave me a nod of approval. I let out a long, deep breath, feeling as though I had just narrowly escaped a terrible fate. With less than 20 days until the release of the college entrance exam results, time was of the essence. Mark and I knew we couldn't afford to waste a single moment. The very next day, we made our way to the bustling hot pot restaurant where Sophie was working. According to Mark, she had taken the job right after the exams finished, trying to earn money for her upcoming college tuition and living expenses. We posed as ordinary customers, and it wasn't long before Sophie, our waitress, approached our table. All the restaurant staff wore simple white t-shirts bearing the company logo, but Sophie had on a long-sleeved cream-colored knit top underneath the standard-issue apron. As she leaned in to hand us warm towels, I noticed a long, faint scar that ran from behind her right ear down to her collar. Mark had already told me that Sophie wore long sleeves all year round, even during the peak of summer, because her arms were covered in scars, ugly marks left by whippings with vines and burns from cigarette butts. It was a cruel, harsh, and unforgettable image. I tried to look at her naturally, careful not to stare. She had delicate, almond-shaped eyes, finely arched brows, and short hair that curled gently at the ends. The light in the restaurant caught her profile just right, outlining her face in a cool, almost ethereal glow. Perhaps it was her aloof and distant aura, but as she leaned over to serve me, I felt a strange sense of unease. When I glanced over at Mark, I saw that his eyes were already red with emotion. After Sophie walked away, I nudged him gently. "Hey, pull yourself together," I whispered. "We have a mission to accomplish." Mark nodded, taking a deep breath. Our plan was to get hired as staff at the hot pot restaurant. The goal was to get close to Sophie, build a rapport with her, and in doing so, find a way to prevent the impending tragedy from ever occurring. As I scanned the QR code on the table to place our order, my mind raced, trying to figure out how we could convince the manager to hire us. Just then, Mark kicked me under the table. He mouthed 2 words silently. "Your wife?" Thanks to our marathon conversation the previous night, I was now completely desensitized to that phrase. I turned my head to look at the girl he was indicating. She was dressed in the restaurant's uniform, her face appearing pale and luminous under the warm ambient light. Her features were delicate, with long eyelashes that were slightly lowered. She had a nervous expression, her eyes fixed intently on a glass of lemonade she was pouring. The glass was nearly overflowing, but she seemed lost in thought and kept pouring. As I watched her, a pale blush slowly crept up her cheeks. The lemonade finally spilled over the rim of the glass. Her face turned an even deeper shade of red. Flustered, she quickly grabbed a towel to wipe up the mess. Seizing the opportunity, Mark asked her, "Excuse me, are you guys still hiring for the summer?" The girl, who I now knew was named Mia, paused for a couple of seconds before replying, "As far as I know, we aren't really short on staff right now." Mark kicked me again. Taking the cue, I quickly jumped in. "Could you possibly check for us? We would really appreciate it. We're very keen to work here." She stammered, "Well, maybe. I can go and ask for you." While we waited, another group of customers came crowding through the entrance. Amidst the throng of people, my eyes instantly locked onto Chloe. I quickly averted my gaze, hoping she hadn't seen me. To my dismay, it seemed she was heading directly towards our table. The moment she entered, she made a beeline for me. She stood by my side, pouting, and asked in a hurt tone, "Leo, what was that message last night all about?" "It means we're finished," I replied, looking her straight in the eye. All affection I might have felt for her had vanished. The previous night, Mark had given me a detailed account of Chloe's toxic behavior. Cheating on me multiple times was just the tip of the iceberg. The list of her manipulative and gaslighting tactics was long and disturbing. Just thinking about it made my fists clench. If I still had any feelings for her after learning all of that, I would have to be completely insane. Chloe's eyes immediately reddened, and her voice trembled as she spoke. "But we only just got together. Are you just playing games with me?" she asked, her voice pitiful. "You've liked me for such a long time. We waited all this time to finally be together. How could you end it just like that?" Her attempt to guilt-trip me felt wrong. In my memory, Chloe had never seemed to like me all that much. Certainly not enough to cry over a breakup. She had always been cool, detached, and in complete control of her emotions. A simple breakup shouldn't have fazed her in the slightest, let alone cause her to make a public scene like this. Then, for the first time, a startling thought flashed through my mind like a bolt of lightning. Could Chloe also be a time traveler? Once the seed of doubt was planted, everything about Chloe's behavior started to seem suspicious. Take, for instance, this very moment. She was openly acknowledging our relationship in a public setting. One of the things Mark had angrily ranted about the previous night was how Chloe always meticulously maintained a single girl persona on all her social media platforms. She never introduced me to her family or even her closest friends. She never even admitted to having a boyfriend. Yet here she was, in front of all her girlfriends, declaring with unwavering sincerity, "You guys can go ahead and find a table. I want to stay here with my boyfriend." Her statement was met with a chorus of teasing whistles and laughter from her friends. Chloe's enchanting eyes were locked onto mine. There's a particular kind of gaze that people who are born with a natural, seductive charm possess, and hers had that exact quality. "Leo," she said softly, "can we please not break up?" Before I could even formulate a response, she added with a stubborn resolve, "I won't agree to it. You are never, ever breaking up with me in this lifetime." A sudden chill ran down my spine. I exchanged a look with Mark, and I could see the same shock and confusion mirrored in his eyes. This completely unexpected turn of events was becoming seriously problematic. To buy myself some time and figure out a new plan, I decided it was best to play along for now and keep Chloe calm. "Then, do you even know what you did wrong?" I asked. Chloe looked at me with a blank expression and shook her head. "That's your problem right there," I said. "If you can't even figure out what you did wrong, then there's nothing more for us to talk about." She looked as if she was on the verge of tears. "Leo," she whimpered. "Is there anything else?" I asked coldly. "If not, please don't bother my friend and me while we're trying to eat." She shot a quick, nervous glance at Mark, then pulled out her phone. "Fine," she said, her tone resolute. "Then add me back as a friend. I'm not leaving this spot until you do." Wanting nothing more than to get rid of this escalating situation as quickly as possible, I didn't hesitate. I pulled out my phone and added her back. She finally left our table. But even after she had gone, the tense atmosphere didn't really dissipate. To avoid being overheard by anyone nearby, I started typing out a message to Mark on my phone. "Do you think she's the same as you?" I typed. Her attitude towards me has done a complete 180. It's totally different. I was almost certain that her transformation had begun with that text message she sent me. "Leo, I miss you so much." She had never called me anything so affectionate before. Throughout our entire 4-hour relationship, I had been the one doing all the chasing. Now, suddenly, the roles had been completely reversed. The one who had been so cold and distant was now being incredibly clingy. Mark nodded cautiously. He typed back a long reply. "After you got together with Mia in the future, Chloe came looking for you many times. She kept saying she regretted everything, that she had been blind and foolish, and that she didn't realize how much she truly loved you until it was too late. She tried to win you back. She even showed up at your wedding to Mia and caused a huge scene." He added another line. "She probably traveled back in time just for you." A wave of intense anxiety washed over me. The absolute last thing I wanted was to become entangled with a manipulative time traveler. Before I could even begin to process what to do next, a waitress approached our table with a fruit tea. She smiled and said, "This is from the pretty girl over at that table?" I looked up and my eyes met Chloe's across the restaurant. She gave me a playful wink. I was speechless. I had chased Chloe for 3 long years, and during that time I was always the one buying her drinks and gifts. This was the very first time she had ever bought anything for me. Mark muttered under his breath, "So, what's the plan now? She's clearly latched onto you for good." Her gaze, like a venomous snake flicking its tongue, still lingered in my mind. The thought made my skin crawl. That was the only phrase that seemed to fit. In the midst of my anxiety, a sudden new idea began to form in my head. "Then let her cling," I said. Mark blinked, confused. "What?" I looked him straight in the eye and explained my new perspective. "I mean, think about it. I was her devoted follower for so many years, always dangling on her hook. Now that she's the one chasing me and can't seem to get what she wants. Honestly, there's a certain satisfaction in that." Mark's expression slowly shifted as he understood my point. He broke into a grin. "If Chloe really did travel back in time," he said, "then right now she's probably completely convinced that you're still madly in love with her." I chuckled and nodded in agreement. "But I'm not. I don't love her anymore at all." As it turned out, treating Chloe with a detached, take-it-or-leave-it attitude felt incredibly empowering. This feeling was amplified after learning about all the ways she had manipulated and played with my emotions in the original timeline. That knowledge just made the reversal of our roles even sweeter. After I re-added her on social media, she began to bombard me with a relentless stream of messages. There were heartfelt apologies, passionate love confessions, and an endless supply of cutesy baby talk messages. Sometimes she would send flirtatious texts loaded with suggestive innuendos, and other times she would record sultry videos of herself in revealing outfits, her seductive voice and stunning figure, a constant attempt to tempt me back into her web. Mark saw some of the video clips and grew worried that I might succumb to her charms. He took to whispering her long list of past toxic manipulations into my ear like a mantra, a constant reminder of the person she truly was. But I wasn't tempted in the slightest. In fact, I found the whole situation rather amusing. This woman, who had once sat on her high horse, treating me like a fool without a second thought, was now just one step away from throwing herself at my feet. How could that not be hilarious? So, naturally, reviewing Chloe's daily messages became one of our new favorite pastimes. Mark particularly enjoyed it. "She put you through so much back then," he would say. "She deserves every single second of this. Thank goodness she time-traveled. Otherwise, we would never have had the chance to mess with her like this." I would just nod, grinning in complete agreement. Compared to my relatively smooth sailing, however, Mark's mission to redeem Sophie was not progressing as well. Thanks to Mia's assistance, both of us had successfully managed to get hired at the Hot Pot restaurant. During his off hours, Mark dedicated every available moment to trying to get closer to Sophie. But Sophie was proving to be extremely difficult to approach. Outside of Mia, she barely spoke to anyone beyond what was required for her work duties. It was as if she had constructed an impenetrable wall around herself. She carefully distanced herself from any form of emotional connection and deliberately avoided any opportunity for bonding. If you talked to her, she would reply politely. If you asked for her help, she would provide it. But beyond that, there was nothing. Watching Mark get stonewalled time and time again, his face growing progressively gloomier with each passing day, I decided it was time to ask Mia for her help again. "Do you have any ideas on how to help them get closer?" I asked her one afternoon. Mia looked surprised by my question, her ears turning a faint shade of red. I quickly clarified. "My friend has a bit of a crush on your friend, but, she's really, cold and distant." Mia asked, "Are you trying to set them up?" I sighed. "At this point, I'm not even hoping they'll end up together. I just want Sophie to stop shutting him out so completely." Mia stared at me for a long moment before finally saying, "I'll try something." And then, something truly amazing happened. During our lunch break that day, Sophie walked right over to our table. She said she had some questions she wanted to ask Mark, and asked if he could come with her. Her voice was as calm and aloof as ever, but Mark looked as if he had just won the lottery. I watched, stunned, as the two of them walked away together. I couldn't contain my curiosity. I grabbed my food tray and rushed over to where Mia was sitting. "How did you manage that?" I asked, amazed. Mia began to explain. "Sophie doesn't like to feel like she's being manipulated. She will only do something if she believes it's her own decision." I nodded, understanding that part. She bit her lip and then continued. "So I told her that I liked you, and I asked her to do me a favor." My eyes widened in surprise. Her cheeks flushed a deeper red. "You and your friend are always together, like you're attached at the hip," she said, her voice soft. "So I told her that the only way I could get some time alone with you was if she could distract him for me." Suddenly, everything clicked into place. On the surface, it appeared as though Sophie was helping Mia get closer to me. But in reality, Mia had masterfully created an opportunity for Mark to get closer to Sophie. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Mia looked down at her hands and added softly, "Leo, you're not mad at me, are you?" She continued, "I just thought it was the only way to help those two get closer. Even though it wasn't real, I know you have a girlfriend, so I got a little worried. If she finds out, would she be upset? If she is, I cut her off. "I don't have a girlfriend." Mia blinked, looking up at me in surprise. I met her gaze directly and said, "I don't mind at all. I think this is a perfect plan." And honestly, in that moment, who wouldn't be a little bit dazzled by a girl with such cleverness and consideration? Thanks to Mia's clever, indirect strategy, Mark was finally able to spend a significant amount of time with Sophie. As for me, I found myself growing noticeably closer to Mia through our daily interactions at work. At first, I couldn't really discern that she had a crush on me. She never showed any overt signs of flirting, and always maintained a perfect, polite distance in both her words and actions. If anything, the only real giveaway was the way she would blush so easily whenever I was near. Aside from that small tell, she was flawless at concealing her feelings. But now, ever since she learned that I didn't have a girlfriend, her emotions were starting to become a little more transparent. For example, she started bringing me breakfast before our shifts began. If I hesitated to accept it, she would insist, "My family made it. I don't really like it, and I would feel terrible throwing it away." Yeah, right. Who prepares a beautifully plated, gourmet-looking breakfast every single day that supposedly no one in the house wants to eat? I teased her about it once, and she blushed, mumbling, "Well, since Sophie thinks I like you, I have to make it look convincing, don't I?" I thought to myself, you can keep up the act, but I can see right through it. Spending time with Mia was like working through an intricate logic puzzle. I already knew the conclusion. She liked me. The mysteries that remained were the why and the how of her feelings. Uncovering all the little signs and clues was surprisingly enjoyable, and the way she tried so desperately to hide her true feelings. Honestly, it was kind of adorable. Sometimes I would intentionally tease her, saying things like, "If you keep this up, I might actually start to think you really like me," just to watch her face turn bright red as she panicked and scrambled to come up with some terrible, unconvincing excuse. It made even the most mundane work shifts feel fun and exciting. I thought things were progressing quite well. That was until the day Chloe suddenly showed up at the Hot Pot restaurant again. I was in the back supply room, grabbing a mop to clean the dining area, when she barged in through the door without knocking. Looking furious, she snapped, "If someone hadn't sent me a photo, I never would have believed it. So you really are working here." Then she shouted, "Why? Why are you even here? You and her shouldn't even know each other at this point." If I had been completely in the dark, her words might have sounded like incoherent rambling. But I wasn't. I knew exactly what she meant. She was talking about me and Mia. According to the original timeline, we weren't supposed to have met yet. I forced myself to maintain a calm expression. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Chloe rushed forward and grabbed my arm. "Leo, you do know something, don't you?" Her eyes were filled with a frantic confusion. "You're supposed to like me. At this point in time, you're supposed to be head over heels in love with me. Why is it different? Why is everything so different now?" Since there were still customers in the main dining area, I didn't want to cause a scene. But Chloe wouldn't let go of my arm. She tugged at my shirt, pulling so hard that she stretched out the sleeve. While we were struggling, the door behind her swung open again. Sophie walked in, most likely to return some cleaning supplies. For a brief moment, she looked surprised to find us there. Then, her gaze shifted to Chloe, and she asked me, "Who is she?" Just as I opened my mouth to try and explain, Chloe turned her intense stare on Sophie. A look of sudden realization seemed to click in her mind. She asked slowly, "Is it because of her?" She looked back at me, her voice low and laced with an almost accusatory tone. "You know she kills herself, don't you? That's why you're here. You're trying to stop it from happening, aren't you?" "So, what did you say to her?" Mark asked, his voice laced with anxiety. After hearing about what had transpired in the supply room, he grabbed me, desperate to know what happened next. "I just ignored her," I said. "I told her to stop acting crazy." Mark followed up quickly. "What about Sophie? What was her reaction?" I answered slowly. She didn't really have one. And that was the part that I couldn't get out of my head. Anyone else, upon hearing someone claim that they were going to commit suicide, would have had some kind of reaction. Curiosity, confusion, disbelief, anything at all. But Sophie showed nothing. There was no change in her emotion, no sign of shock, not even a single raised eyebrow. Then a thought crossed my mind, one that I had never even considered before. Could it be, I said, that Sophie is a time traveler too? Mark actually let out a short, dismissive laugh. What are you even talking about? He said, shaking his head. She just doesn't care. Or maybe what Chloe said struck a nerve. Maybe that was the exact moment the thought of suicide first entered her mind. My heart tightened at the thought. It was incredibly difficult, almost impossible, to associate a word like suicide with someone like Sophie, someone who worked so hard every single day just to earn enough money for school. What really happened to her? I asked. Why did she do it? Mark fell silent, lost in his painful memories. It took him a long time to finally speak. She got stuck in that summer, he said, his voice heavy. She never made it out. Mark went on to tell me that after the patricide, Sophie's mother never forgave her. The very same woman whom Sophie had killed to protect, the woman who had endured years of brutal domestic violence from her husband, had a first reaction that wasn't relief, but grief over no longer having a husband. She blamed Sophie for everything, Mark said, his voice cracking. Sophie was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Her mom never visited her, not even once. It got worse. After she was released, her mother started harassing her. She would send her text messages and letters, saying things like, "You're a heartless monster, and if I had known it would come to this, I never would have given birth to you." I cursed under my breath. What the actual hell? Mark let out a shaky breath. When the story first broke, everyone talked about how young she was, saying that once she served her time, she would have a second chance at a new life. His voice trembled as he choked up. But it turns out, freedom wasn't a new beginning for her at all. It was just a new kind of hell. He paused. Maybe she just couldn't take it anymore. On another day when college exam results were released years later, Sophie hid a razor blade in her clothes while pretending to go take a shower. By the time Mark found her, the entire bathtub was filled with blood. She was covered in it, her skin as pale as a ghost, lying limp in his arms. Even then, in her final moments, she used what little strength she had to wipe the tears from Mark's face and said, "Don't cry. It's my fault. It's all my fault." Was she brainwashed by her mom? I asked. Maybe, probably, Mark replied quietly. I hated her mom with every fiber of my being, but I didn't know how to punish her, so I decided to blow the whole thing up. I went to the media and exposed everything. I let the public be the judge. He gave a bitter smile. What happened back then? Who was right and who was wrong? And what's happening now? Can we even say who's right or wrong anymore? He looked at me, his eyes filled with pain. It couldn't have all been Sophie's fault, right? Then he added, but I never got to see how it all turned out. Before I knew it, I had already time traveled. There was this voice in my head telling me that I could change Sophie's past. I immediately remembered that day right after the college entrance exam. How nervous and excited Mark had looked when he first told me his incredible story. I put a hand on his shoulder and said firmly, "You can. You absolutely can." Mark rubbed his temples, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Honestly, Leo, I'm terrified." He confessed. "Every time I see Sophie going back to that house, my chest tightens. I'm scared that I won't be able to change anything. I'm scared that my being here doesn't matter at all, that fate is already sealed, and we're just helplessly heading towards that inevitable day." I shook my head firmly. "No," I said, speaking each word with conviction. "You didn't just come back to save Sophie. You came here to save me, too. Think about it. If you hadn't shown up, I'd still be with Chloe right now. If I had ended up marrying that toxic manipulator, she would have turned me into the king of all simps. But now, not only am I not with her, but I met Mia early. I've avoided who knows how many dead ends in my life. That just proves that fate can be changed. And that means Sophie is going to be okay too. Mark nodded, a flicker of hope returning to his eyes. That night, Chloe sent me another message. Leo, I'm sorry. What happened today was my fault. I just don't understand how you could stop loving me so suddenly. Is it because of Sophie? Did you already know what she was going to do? Fine. If you're not going to reply, I just hope you don't regret this. I still hadn't forgotten the poisonous glare Chloe had given Sophie earlier that day. To prevent her from interfering again and potentially ruining Mark's plan to save Sophie, I decided it was time to give Chloe a little gift. I compiled all of her threatening messages, along with the security camera footage from the supply room that clearly showed her barging in and seemingly laying a trap for Sophie, and handed everything over to the police. The authorities charged her with disrupting public order and detained her for 5 days. I was very pleased with this outcome. At least now we knew that Chloe was no longer an immediate threat, because in just 3 days, the college entrance exam results would be released. On the day the exam results were announced, Sophie, as expected, secured the top position in the liberal arts division for the entire city. When her teacher called with the good news, she was in the middle of her shift, busy clearing empty plates from a table. After offering a few brief words of thanks, she simply put her phone away and continued with her work. Her calm composure and complete indifference to such a significant achievement were truly admirable. Mia walked over and waved a hand in front of my face. "What's with that look you're giving her?" she teased. "You look totally mesmerized. Do you admire her that much?" I replied, a bit speechless. "What kind of question is that? She's the top scorer in liberal arts. Of course I'm impressed." Then I decided to tease her back. "Are you jealous of her?" She scoffed. "What would I have to be jealous of?" With a slight pout and a tone that was just a little bit defensive, she added, "I ranked 5th in the whole city. That's not too bad either, right?" I exclaimed, "That's amazing, Mia. A low-key genius who just stuns everyone. Is that your whole vibe?" Mia's face instantly turned a deep shade of red. Her eyes darted away from mine slightly, but the way her lips were trying their best not to curve into a smile clearly showed how happy she was. I thought to myself, she's kind of cute when she gets flustered. Then I asked, "So, did you tell her what I talked to you about?" Mia nodded. "I told her you're planning to confess to me today. She promised she'd come along to support you. She said she can stay out all night." I was satisfied. This was the plan that Mark and I had carefully worked out. We couldn't control what Sophie might do if she were at home, but we could make sure she wasn't there in the first place. As long as she didn't return to that house tonight, the tragic incident would not happen. After our shift at the Hot Pot restaurant ended, the 4 of us made our way to a karaoke lounge located in the nearby mall. We settled onto a long sofa, all 4 of us sitting in a row, with Sophie and Mark in the middle. When I saw Sophie giggling at something Mark said, and even playfully reaching out to pinch his arm, a warm sense of relief washed over me. Finally. The eternal iceberg was finally starting to melt. Mia and I exchanged a knowing glance. We both felt that there was real hope for those two. Mark and I also locked eyes from across the sofa. Both of us felt that tonight's plan just might work. The pressure and emotions of the past few weeks seemed to melt away in the music. We sang song after song, and the night wore on until it was nearly dawn. I had let my guard down completely and was munching on some fruit from the platter. Suddenly, the screen of Sophie's phone lit up. She glanced down at it, and her expression changed abruptly. She stood up, grabbing her phone, and started heading for the door. "What's wrong?" Mia asked. Sophie glanced quickly at Mark and me before whispering to Mia, That guy has been drinking. I'm worried about my mom. Mark immediately realized something was terribly wrong and called out anxiously, "Sophie, don't go." Sophie replied softly, "I'm sorry, you guys can keep having fun. Something came up at home. I need to go check on it." Her hand was already on the doorknob when Mark stood up and pleaded, "Don't go, please come back!" Sophie paused for a fraction of a second, but didn't stop. She opened the door and walked out, leaving the room in a sudden, heavy silence. "I'm going after her. I have to go," Mark shouted, bolting out of the karaoke room in pursuit of Sophie. I followed close behind him, with Mia right on my heels. By the time we reached the main entrance of the building, however, Sophie was nowhere in sight. Mark scanned the area anxiously, then turned to Mia and asked, "Do you know where she lives?" Mia hesitated for a moment. Sophie doesn't like it when anyone meddles in her family's affairs. Mark's tone was firm and unwavering. "No, this time we absolutely have to intervene." Mia bit her lip, clearly conflicted. "But her family situation is extremely complicated. Her dad has been an alcoholic for years. When he gets drunk, he becomes violent. If you two go there—" Mark cut her off, his voice filled with a desperate urgency. "I understand. Just take us there. Please!" Mia looked at me, her eyes seeking my opinion. I added my support to Mark's plea. "What if something truly terrible happens tonight because we didn't go?" She finally nodded. "Okay." We hailed a cab and sped towards Sophie's home, which was located in an old, run-down apartment building. As we were climbing the stairs, we could already hear the sounds of furious yelling and cursing coming from the 4th floor. Sensing that something was seriously wrong, Mark broke into a sprint and raced up the remaining flights. Mia and I rushed to keep up with him. The door to the apartment was flung open, and we were confronted with a horrifying sight. A man, his face flushed red from alcohol, was holding a kitchen knife high above his head, poised to strike. Huddled on the floor beneath the gleaming blade, Sophie was trembling as she shielded a middle-aged woman with her own body. The woman was crying uncontrollably, her voice choked with sobs as she pleaded with the man to stop. "Don't!" Mark shouted, rushing forward to intervene. But even at a full sprint, the few steps that separated them were still too far. Just as Mark launched a kick at the man's leg, the knife came swinging down, slicing into Sophie's back. In an instant, blood began to pour from the wound. Mia ran forward, pressing her hands firmly on Sophie's back to try and staunch the bleeding. Mark wrestled the man to the ground with all his might, yelling at me, "Call the police now!" Before I could even react, a hoarse, hysterical voice roared even louder than his, "Don't call the police! Don't take my husband away!" I looked up at the hysterical woman and cursed under my breath. Then, without a second of hesitation, I dialed 110. That chaotic night inevitably concluded at the hospital. Thankfully, we learned that Sophie's injuries had not penetrated deep enough to reach her bones or internal organs. Although the knife had gone in deep, it was ultimately just a surface wound. With proper medical care, she was expected to make a full recovery. Outside the hospital room, Mark sat by Sophie's bedside, holding her hand tightly, his face a mask of profound relief. Mia and I sat on a bench out in the hallway. She stared off into the distance, seemingly lost in her thoughts. When I turned to look at her, our eyes met directly. She asked softly, "You guys knew that something was going to happen tonight, didn't you?" She continued, her voice quiet but certain. "That's why you didn't want Sophie to go home. That's why you insisted on going there." Her tone wasn't accusatory. It just seemed like she wanted to understand the truth. But I simply said, "I can't tell you." Mark hadn't told Sophie the whole story because he knew she would never believe him. I, on the other hand, kept silent because I wasn't entirely sure if the girl sitting in front of me could be fully trusted, even if she was destined to become my future wife someday. At this stage of the game, I knew I had to remain cautious. So I added, "I can only tell you that we never meant any harm." She offered me a soft, understanding smile. I know you just wanted to help Sophie." Then she said something that resonated deep within me. "I just want you to know that I will always be on your side. Whatever happens, I'll face it with you." In that moment, the door I had kept so tightly closed on trust creaked open, just a little. After the police were called, Sophie's father didn't face any serious legal consequences. The incident was ultimately deemed a family matter, and Sophie's mother repeatedly insisted to the authorities that it had all been a terrible accident, not an intentional act of violence. As a result, the police could only issue a formal warning and let them go. Online, however, it was an entirely different story. The public outcry was swift and intense. That was Mia's and my doing. It hadn't been difficult to leak the story to the media, especially since Sophie held the high-profile title of top scorer in the liberal arts for the National College Entrance Exam. A headline like "Liberal Arts Valedictorian stabbed by drunken father and hospitalized" was practically guaranteed to go viral. Parents and students across the country were outraged and heartbroken on Sophie's behalf. The internet exploded with condemnation for her parents. That wave of online fury soon spilled over into the real world. Neighbors, relatives, and family friends, once they learned the truth about what kind of people Sophie's parents were, began to avoid them like the plague. Some people would even openly spit on the ground when they passed by, treating the couple like vermin in the street. After being discharged from the hospital, Sophie never returned to that house again. She moved into Mia's apartment in the city. When I found out that Mia not only owned property in the city, but was also basically quietly wealthy, I was completely shocked. "How many other secrets are you hiding from me?" I asked her. Then, "You have that much money and you were still working at that hot pot place?" Mia whispered. "I was there for her." And I thought, wow, that's some next-level best friend loyalty. Mark didn't want Sophie to be out of his sight, and I wanted to be there to support my best friend. So, the four of us ended up living in that spacious apartment together. At first, our days were filled with the simple, carefree activities of a group of young people, eating together, chilling out, and just messing around. But once Sophie's wound began to heal, she couldn't sit still any longer. She wanted to go back to work. Mark was strongly against the idea and vented his frustrations to me, so I talked to Mia. Leveraging Sophie's top scorer title, we easily gathered a group of eager students and set up an online tutoring business. We filled her schedule with classes from morning until night. This way she could teach from the comfort of home and was making far more money than she ever did waiting tables. The plan worked out perfectly for everyone. Sophie was happy because she was earning more money. Mark was happy because she didn't need to leave the house. I was happy because my best friend finally had some peace of mind. And Mia was happy. Well, I wasn't exactly sure why she was happy, but she just seemed to be. All in all, it was a win-win situation for everyone involved. While Mark and Sophie buried themselves in their respective worlds of study and work, Mia and I were stuck trying to decide on our college applications. It should have been a simple decision. We could just apply to the same schools we had in the original timeline. Mark had already told me that he had previously attended N University, but he had chosen that particular school because of Chloe. This time, I wanted something different for myself. So I asked Mia, "Where are you planning to apply?" She listed a few schools. All of them were ones where her high scores easily qualified her, while mine barely met the cutoff. I turned to look at her. She quickly looked away, explaining awkwardly, "These are all really good schools. I like them." I just kept staring at her. Her face slowly began to turn red. Lately, my interactions with Mia often felt like this, like holding a shaken-up can of soda that was barely contained. One pull of the tab, and everything would burst out into the open. But neither of us had been brave enough to break that tension yet. I smiled. Okay, wherever you apply, I'll apply too. Mia tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, flipped open a book as if she wasn't fazed at all, and suddenly launched into a deep and complex discussion about the 4 types of causality in philosophy. Sure, as long as she was happy. That period of peaceful and sweet domesticity came to an abrupt end the moment I received a call from Chloe. Ever since she had been detained following the police incident, I hadn't heard a single word from her. I hung up immediately. She called again. I hung up again. Then she called a 3rd time. Annoyed, I was about to block her number for good when she sent a text message. I'm on the school rooftop. I want to see you one last time. My finger froze over the block button. Then another message came through. We have to end this properly, or would you rather I just keep haunting you forever? I hesitated for a few seconds, then typed back a single reply. Got it. The next time I laid eyes on Chloe, it was on the wind-swept rooftop of our old high school. I had always known her as bright, vibrant, and beautiful. After all, she had been the undisputed campus goddess. There were rarely moments when she didn't look absolutely stunning. But now, as she leaned against the rooftop railing, she looked pale and incredibly frail. The wind whipped through her already messy hair, making her appear even more disheveled and lost. When she saw me approach, she managed a weak, tired smile and said, "You came?" "What do you want to say?" I asked, getting straight to the point. "So heartless," she said with a humorless laugh. "Shouldn't this be the moment in time when you love me the most?" I frowned. If this is the direction this conversation is going, I'm leaving. Her expression shifted. "You were the one behind Sophie's situation, weren't you?" she asked. "If you hadn't interfered, the headlines today would have been all about her murdering her father." I remained silent, letting her ramble. She continued. "Since we both know what's really going on here, I'll just speak plainly." Chloe then told me her story. "After I was thrown out of your wedding, I got into a terrible car accident. On the brink of death, a voice asked me, 'If you could go back in time, would you believe you could make him love you again?' I said yes. I even chose to return to the time when you loved me the most." She paused, a look of bitter irony on her face. But what I didn't know was that the voice was playing a cruel game with me. It sent you back, too. So it turns out, no matter when I returned to, you were never going to love me again. I wanted to argue with her, but honestly, what was the point in trying to reason with someone who had clearly lost their grip on reality? "It was my fault," she continued, her voice soft and full of regret. "I hurt you so badly back then, because I didn't understand my own feelings. I'm sorry. I've repented for what I did. I've been punished twice over now. I know I deserve it. I just don't know what else I can possibly do to make things right." Then she suddenly looked up at me, her eyes pleading. "Tell me, what would it take for you to finally believe that I love you?" I replied flatly, "I don't need your love." She glanced over her shoulder at the long drop to the ground below, and her expression darkened, as if the last bit of light inside her was fading away. She choked out, "I think I'm about to die. That voice, it said that if I could be with you, I would find happiness. If I couldn't, then I would die." She gave another bitter smile. "Though technically, I've already died once." Her voice trembled. "I'm so scared. Can you at least just say you love me, just once? Just to give me a little bit of comfort?" I let out a long sigh. Chloe, your tragedy isn't my fault. I know I brought all of this on myself, she said. I just wanted to hear you say you love me. That's all I wanted. At that point, I knew there was nothing more to be said. I turned around and began to walk away. Behind me, her voice, trembling with a raw, desperate energy, shouted, "So cruel! Since you're going to treat me like this, I sent you a little gift in return," she yelled after me. "Before you came up here, I called Mia, too. I just wanted to see, how much does she really love you?" Her voice, sharp as a dagger, echoed behind me as I fled. "After she finds out the truth about everything, will she still be able to love you?" I tore down the stairs, running as fast as my legs could carry me, desperate to leave that venomous voice behind. All I could think about was finding Mia, explaining everything to her, right now. But just as I burst out of the school building, I ran straight into someone. It was Mia. "Why are you in such a hurry?" she asked, looking concerned. "What's going on with you?" Still in a daze from the encounter on the rooftop, I blurted out, "What did Chloe say to you? She called you. What did she say?" Mia's reaction seemed to come from a completely different universe. She suddenly looked down, a shy blush creeping up her neck and onto her cheeks. "I don't really remember most of it," she said quietly. "As soon as she said I was your wife, I didn't really hear anything else she said after that." "What?" My jaw nearly hit the pavement. "I'm serious," she insisted, her blush deepening. "After she said that, my head was just filled with the thought, I'm going to be your wife. I couldn't read, I couldn't sit still, so I came out to find you." I scratched my head in utter frustration and disbelief. For a moment, I had absolutely no idea what to say. But yeah, maybe being a hopeless romantic had its advantages. At least she knew what was important to listen to, and what was best to just tune out. Whatever chaos Chloe had been trying to stir up, as long as Mia didn't care, then none of it mattered at all. On the bus ride back, Mia and I sat in a seat at the very back. She was clearly still caught up in the whole husband and wife fantasy that Chloe had inadvertently planted in her head. Her ears were flushed an unusual and persistent shade of red. I felt like that shaken-up can of soda again, about to burst if the pressure wasn't released soon, so I just decided to say it outright. "You like me, don't you?" I asked. Mia gave a shy, almost imperceptible nod. "Why?" I pressed. That was the question that had been lingering in my mind ever since we started spending more time together. We hadn't attended the same high school. Our daily lives didn't naturally intersect. Our hobbies and interests didn't overlap in the slightest. Even the places where we lived were on opposite sides of the city. She was far to the east, and I was far to the west. There was absolutely no logical reason why she should have developed feelings for me. She pressed her lips together for a moment before saying, "Do I really have to say it?" "I really want to know," I replied. She finally began to speak, her voice slow and soft. "During the New Year's performance in our first year of high school," she began, "my best friend dragged me along to your school's celebration. Then, at the last minute, she pushed me onto the stage to sing a song." She paused, a flicker of old embarrassment in her eyes. "I was so nervous. My voice cracked and went completely off-key. People in the crowd started booing and laughing. I was so humiliated, I just wanted the ground to swallow me whole. But you were the very first person who clapped for me." I was taken aback. "Just because of that?" It sounded almost ridiculous. Mia must have sensed my disbelief. She fell silent for a long while. Eventually, she whispered with a faint trace of hurt in her tone, "Actually, I already liked you the moment I saw you standing in the crowd. But back then, all you ever looked at was Chloe." Her soft, almost aggrieved voice helped me finally understand why she had been so hesitant to bring this up, because at the very moment she had fallen for me, I had been completely focused on someone else. You knew I liked someone else, and you still liked me, I asked, amazed by her persistence. She lowered her eyes. Feelings aren't something you can just switch on and off. I couldn't help it, she confessed. It was my first time ever liking someone. I didn't know how to do it properly. When I missed you too much, I would just follow my instincts and come to your school just to get a glimpse of you. And the more I watched you, the harder it became to let you go. I teased her gently. Did I look sweet with Chloe? She scoffed. You two weren't that sweet. The moment the words left her mouth, she realized what she'd said and turned bright red again. I don't like Chloe anymore, I said seriously. I haven't liked her in a very long time. She nodded. At first, I didn't dare to believe it. And now? I asked. Do you believe it now? She looked up at me, her eyes clear and direct. I don't need to believe that, she said. I just want to know, do you like me now? Even just a little bit? My heart skipped a beat. The bus was nearing our stop, and the automated voice began to announce the next station, reminding passengers to prepare to get off. Anna was still looking at me, her eyes full of a hopeful anticipation. Everything in that moment seemed to be pushing me toward a decision. But honestly, there was nothing left to consider. Of course I liked her. She was sincere, she was passionate, and she was real. How could I possibly not like her? I reached out, took her hand, and gently pulled her toward the rear exit of the bus. As the doors hissed open, I leaned in close to her ear and whispered, I do. I like you. A lot more than just a little. She stood there on the pavement, completely stunned. She remained in a daze the entire walk home, letting me lead her by the hand as if she couldn't quite believe that any of this was real. After going back and forth on it for a while, the four of us finally made a decision. We would all apply to the same university. After all, Mia and I were now officially a couple. And even though Sophie and Mark weren't together yet, we all followed what we jokingly started to call the closed-loop principle. Mark couldn't be without me, and Sophie couldn't be without Mia. So, in the end, it was settled that the four of us would stick together. On the day our official university admission letters arrived, something both significant and strangely fitting happened. Sophie's father passed away. Reportedly, after a night of heavy drinking, he had developed a high fever and taken some cephalosporin, a type of antibiotic, which triggered an acute allergic reaction and sent him into anaphylactic shock. He died because they were unable to save him in time. The most dramatic part of the story was that the cephalosporin had been given to him by none other than Sophie's mother. She had been completely unaware that mixing alcohol and that specific antibiotic could cause a severe, and in this case, fatal, disulfiram-like reaction. It was a tragic mistake born from ignorance. When I heard the news, the first thing I did was go find Mark. I wanted to ask him if the woman who had once relentlessly blamed her daughter for trying to kill her husband would now feel any guilt for being the one who had actually, albeit accidentally, caused his death. Mark just gave a short, sharp laugh and said, "Karma, I guess." Despite everything that had happened, Sophie still returned to her family home after her father's death to attend the funeral. But when she came back to the apartment, she was clearly troubled. Mark asked her what was wrong. Sophie replied, her voice flat. "My mom blamed me for keeping that fever medicine in the house." Mark was instantly furious. "What does that have to do with you? It's not your fault." I chimed in, "Exactly. No one forced him to drink." Anna nodded along in agreement. "Right. And out of all the different fever medications in the world, why did she have to pick that one?" After thinking it over for a long moment, Sophie finally nodded and said, "You're right. This has nothing to do with me." After that day, she went back to her old home a few more times, but always with Mark by her side. He didn't trust her mother, and was worried she might say something awful to Sophie again. Watching the two of them walk off together, I decided to make a bet with Mia who was reading a book on the couch. As I sliced a watermelon in the kitchen, I asked, "When do you think those two will finally get together?" Mia closed her book and made her guess. "Next year," she said. "Sophie's not exactly an easy person to win over." I confidently replied, "This year." I then tossed her own logic back at her, because if there's one person my bro can win over, it's anyone. She snorted. "What are we betting?" I grinned. "You tell me." Mia suddenly looked up and studied my face. Her eyes moved slowly from my eyes to my nose, and then lower. Then, with a completely serious expression, she said, "If you lose, you have to kiss me." Without a moment's hesitation, I leaned over the back of the couch, cupped her face in my hands, and kissed her. Then I said, "Pick something else. That doesn't feel like a punishment at all." Mia froze for a few seconds, completely flustered. She grabbed the book from the couch and used it to cover her blushing face. Peeking out from behind it with eyes that were now bright with unshed tears of laughter, she whispered, "I can't think of anything else. You pick." I frowned, thinking hard, and muttered, "I can't think of anything either." So the bet was cancelled, since neither of us could agree on the stakes. And just like that, the summer after the college entrance exam flew by, a season filled with laughter, watermelon, and countless soft, quiet moments. Before we knew it, the new school year had begun. The four of us packed up our belongings and, as freshly admitted college freshmen, stepped into our new lives side by side. The road ahead was still unknown, filled with uncertainty. But the future was right there, stretching out beneath our feet. So we went ahead and chased it,